Rebecca's changed today. We have a worthy substitute.
Oh, you worthy?
I'm not the substitute. You're the substitute. No, we're pleased to have Jonathan Ridley here with us today. And most of you all know Jonathan been with us 10 years now, and you've heard him preach and teach and all kinds of things. And you're just coming off a vacation now.
I am, yeah. I was 5 days in South Central Virginia, right on the border of North Carolina and Virginia. We were at a place called Smith Mountain Lake. And it's amazing. I'd never been to this lake before, but it was a man-made lake back in the early 60s. It's over 500 miles of shoreline.
Whoa.
And yeah, so it's beautiful. It's stunning.
In the 60s?
1963, the Roanoke Valley decided the dam, they just had to flood this area. Of course, there were a lot of homes and old towns there, so the government bought this land, and then they flooded it. It took about 3 years for the dam.
I didn't know there was anything like that going on since the TVA back in the 30s when they did that. Lake Marion, a lot of them all over the country that did that.
Yeah, they did it, and if you go between Boone and Johnson City, there's Watauga Lake, same thing. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it was beautiful though. I was surprised how big it was. We got on a boat one day and rode for about 30 minutes to a marina just to get some ice cream. And we could have kept going. It was just, it was amazing. So it was great because for us, we didn't have to go anywhere. We just stayed in the house there with my two brothers. We didn't leave the whole 5 days.
So how many people were in the house?
Well, let's see. My family, which was 8, and then my brother and his 2 children, his wife, that's 12, then my other brother. So we had 13, 14 people.
Must have been a big old house.
It was a big house.
Who's doing all the cooking?
My older brother. He's really, really, really good cook.
As opposed to you?
Yeah, I can't cook a thing. I burn water. So, and he loves doing it. So this is you remember you met him, the real tall brother. Mm-hmm. So he cooked for us, and it was just a wonderful time. And
did you fish?
The children did. There was a man that took them out fishing. They hired somebody to take them out in the lake, and they caught these incredible bass, and they were huge. So I didn't go do any of that.
Did y'all cook the bass?
No, I think they let them go. Yeah.
Lake Marion, a number of years back. Where I'm talking about Lake Marion on 95.
Yeah.
That's a huge place. When they were flooding that hole, before they flooded it all, they had to cut timbers and stuff, huge old growth trees, and they chained them down to the bottom of the lake. And the lake preserved that wood, and so back, maybe 30 years ago, they started harvesting that wood and developed a technique to go down and cut those chains and lift it up and send it into sawmills and all that kind of stuff, made all kind of things out of it. It was amazing. Millions of yards of board feet of timber and stuff was chained down to the bottom of that lake so it wouldn't float up and be a hazard to people.
Wow.
Long ago and far away. But I'm surprised the government could get, that people permission from people to, they just closed up, just
well,
bought the whole.
They didn't really get permission. I mean, in rural Virginia, you're very, very poor, and the government just comes in and tells you, here's the offering price. You can take it or leave it. And this is back in the 60s so people, they couldn't afford lawyers and stuff like that. So, you just...
You took it.
You took it. It's probably more money they've ever had before, and they just moved somewhere else. And so, I mean, I'd never even heard of this lake before. I was talking to Josh about it, and he knew all about it. So,
well, how did you get into it?
My brother, his brother-in-law owns the house. So
wow,
he lets us stay there. And actually, we went to Appalachian State. This guy, we went together to Appalachian State together. Although I didn't know him, we were there at the same time.
That's where you were big time runner and.
I don't know if I was big time. Yeah. I ran.
Didn't you win a state championship or something in there?
Yeah, but in college, everybody's state champions. Seriously,
no,
everybody's great. I mean, everybody's great in college. So. But I got there.
You didn't go on to the Olympics, so you stopped a little short of that.
No. Hey, but I brought questions for you, so we're.
Whoa, aren't you prepared today? Look at this.
I did. I don't like having surprises, so now if I can help it, so I got some questions to ask you.
Well, I'll try to do a little something.
So but this is fun. This will be fun. So, and I thought it would just be another side to hear just your history, and one of the questions I have down here is, do you have, or can you give examples of spiritual heroes in your life?
Bishop Samuel would be the first one to come to mind.
And why? That's the other question. And why?
He was willing to take a chance on lots of things. He brought Emanuel Johnson. His heart just went out to the unusual circumstances in the world. And when Liberia was going through all that terrible killing down there under Charles Taylor, he reached out to the folks down there at the seminary, and he brought Emanuel Johnson and his family. He brought several families out there, just moved them lock, stock, and barrel up here to save their lives. Emanuel Johnson is another one, just a tremendous saint. He told me a story one time. I was listening to his testimony before he ever came here to the diocese. And the Charles Taylor's men had got 4 priests from the seminary, had all 4 of them dig their graves, stood them right in front of the graves, and then went down the line, shooting them in the back of the head. Skipped over him, went to the next one. 3 out of 4 in the graves. Don't know why ever skipped them or anything like that,
Yeah.
But that's a saint there. I mean, to live through that, he was the head of it. He was a bishop. Just a really special kind of guy. Granger Mccoy would be
I remember you talked about him before. Yeah.
Granger would be another spiritual hero. Love him. Hope to get back up there again sometime pretty soon to watch his carving and to spend another early Monday morning in his workshop, praying with him. Just a real dear fellow. Alan Wooten and Pete McCoy are the spiritual giants. We're in that same prayer group. Both of those fellows are dead now, and as is another one, George Picklashcott. Just plain, I started to say plain old ordinary guys, but they were salt of the earth kind of fellows. No pretense about them, not at all. But just solid men of God who walked their faith through all kinds of hardships. And it's the ordinary that's made extraordinary by their faith that I see as heroes.
Right, yeah. Because they lived it and breathed it. And
that's right. With not for any kind of fanfare show, anything like that. Just it's who they became in Christ.
Right.
And it was natural to them. It was ordinary to them. But as you look at them, it was extraordinary. Still is extraordinary.
Those are people you actually knew. Is there anybody going back centuries earlier that you've read about that has inspired you?
Oh, I've been reading about all kind of. In fact, I'm just working through a thing now on the saints, and not saints of old, but last night I was reading about John Bunyan and people like that, and it just struck me.
Progress.
Yeah, it just struck me about how much difficulty those people had with the established church, trying to be recognized as a Christian, really. The old time evangelists, and just so sad how the church, the established church, whether it's Methodist, Presbyterians, or Anglicans, how resistant they are to anything that's out of the norm.
It's always been like that. That's why the church constantly needs reformation.
Just really sad. And it's been consistent across countries,
All the time, yeah. I remember, one of my spiritual heroes many years ago was George Whitefield, who I think was one of the greatest preachers in history. Actually was very good friends with Benjamin Franklin. They used to go on vacations together. But
Jonathan Edwards was in that group, wasn't he?
Yes, yeah, they were around the same time. Yes, but Whitefield got invited to preach at Trinity Wall Street. And this, even back then, it was beginning to slide down away from the gospel. And Whitefield came and preached there, and he preached on John 3:3, you must be born again. He preached on the first night, and the second night he preached the same passage again, and the third night he preached the same passage again. Eventually, to the senior warden of the church came to and said, Reverend Whitefield, we're really glad you're here, but can you please preach on a different passage than John 3:3, you must be born again. And he said, I'll change the passage when you're born again.
Whoa.
So they asked him not to come back. So what he did was he went across the road there in New York and began open-air preaching. That's one of the places it started. It was from Whitefield, because they would not allow him. So he just went outside and began doing it outside, and that's where that all began.
Wow.
So, but it's because he was trying to bring about revival, and it was just.
Johnny Cash is one of your spiritual heroes, isn't he?
He is, yeah, for better, for worse. He,
I mean, he turned things around. And
you and I read the same book. It just came out about him, and it's, I love stories of people of redemption. People whose lives have fallen apart, and God grabs a hold of them, and they're radically changed, and they are able to speak into a generation. Primarily they're not church-going people, because they've come out of that. So I think you and I are both drawn to some people like that.
Oh, yeah, very much so. Very much so.
What makes you the most fulfilled in ministry?
Sitting like I do often with folks who come in and are burdened and listening. There's not a whole lot of listening that goes on these days. But the fulfillment comes in listening and having a word or two to say that might help things just, if nothing, make life a little bit better. I can't fix the kinds of things they have, but I can sure address them and point them to Jesus. And I think the fulfillment comes in that somehow or another they feel comfortable in coming in to talk to you. And you get a call from out of the blue, and you got time and whatever, and always work it out. And it's at odd times and totally unexpected, but you just get to sit down, sometimes on the steps out there, sometimes on the bluff at the old church over there, a lot over there. And that somehow or another people feel comfortable, and you talk for a minute or two, and then all of a sudden they just, the tears just start coming, and whatever the heavy burden is that they had, it just starts coming out like that. And just the fact that for some reason or another, that God has brought them to you, and they have enough trust to share what has been, for years, unshareable, and that they'll trust you to hear, and in this day and time, not to put it on social media and all that kind of stuff. It's hard to find anybody you can be confidential with these days, but that's working one-on-one with people would be the most fulfillment.
One of the areas I see for you in my time is I think you're also most fulfilled when you're creating something new, building something that's going to last in the future. Obviously, we're pouring ourselves into people's lives, but, something like this or the school. You and I have talked privately, but I certainly don't mind saying this publicly because it's public knowledge, but, when we church bought the property over here in Buckwalter, it was just a 2-lane road. You got a lot of resistance. People like, why will we ever buy property? There's nothing but tumbleweeds blowing down that road.
Yeah.
And but that's where you get excited about that, because you were able to see.
And I think I do get excited from that. I think it's excitement in that the Lord gives you a vision and then opens your eyes to strategies and ways to transform the vision into reality. There are a lot of people who say they have visions for the future, but I have found over the years that in most cases, they're not visions, they're dreams. And it's like Disneyland or something, I wish upon a star, that kind of thing, And a dream is just a I wish statement, but a vision is I will. God gives you the vision, and then if you're discerning and pay attention, and you're faithful over time, you say, all right, here's the strategy that he's given, and here's the resources and whatever.
It takes gifting, though, to be able to see that, because a lot of people have dreams or visions and what they want, but they don't know how to get there. That's right. And God's given you the ability.
And so it's no good if you can't transform it into a reality.
That's exactly right.
You just like.
When I was in seminary in Orlando, the little church I was involved with, one of the guys that worked there I never even heard of these people before, but he worked for Disney. He was called an Imagineer. He's one of the best in the world, but all they do is imagine stuff and create it and make it into being. So they just constantly think of new ideas, and this guy's mind was just off the chart. But he was telling me, because the animal kingdom had just opened up in Disney. They've been working on this for like a decade. One of the parks there in Disney World in Orlando. And Joe Warren was his name. Anyway, he said that when they were on the tour through the park, one of the people said to Walt Disney's, I don't know if it was his son or one of his grandsons, said, you know, I so wish Walt Disney could see this. And the grandson said to this female, he did see it. That's why it's here.
Hey, that's exactly right. See.
And Joe told me that, I'm like, I'm going to use that.
You know, and that's the thing. You got to see it today and plant seeds and all that kind of stuff before it can sprout tomorrow.
Yeah.
And when you're dealing with the church and buildings and things like that, when you're dealing with children, you know, you have an eye on what is, but you deal with what is in the context of what could be. And you know, you've got 6 children. You see them, warts and all, right now. But as you see them, you see what they could be.
Yeah.
And what they're becoming.
It's exciting too.
And all of that. Oh yeah. Well, it's the same way with buildings and all that kind of stuff. But I've found that if you can't do it with people, you can't do it with buildings either.
Right.
Because it has to be nourished through that passion that God gives you for people. Because the buildings are just a tool to reach people. That's all. You miss the people, you miss the point.
You know, I'm constantly keeping up with all these college kids, and a few weeks ago I ran into one of them at a dentist's office here, and she's an internship, and she wants to be a dentist, and she was wearing the scrubs and everything, and she looked so happy. She looked like, this is my element.
Whoa.
And I was just so proud of her. And it's just her. It's just, you've seen all these kids I'm close to now. They're all either getting close to graduation or coming out of it, and they're doing something with their lives. And it's just, even Alex up there, we talked about just with Josh, what he's living in Atlanta and what he's accomplished. It's just so exciting to see them start to live into their potential. And it's just the beginning.
Just beginning.
And it's just going to get greater and greater. So.
Just beginning.
This is the one I have looking forward to you answering. That
now,
is.
am I going to have to call a friend to get an answer to this one here? You think I can do it by myself?
No, you'll be able to do this. Well, listen, this is a deep question, but I think it's a worthy one, and probably all of us should maybe ask ourselves is, if Chuck Owens today could go back to talk to the Chuck Owens 25 years ago who arrived here, what do you know now that you wish you could tell Chuck Owens then? What counsel would you give him?
Be more patient.
What do you mean by that? How so?
Because when I came, I could see what could be. And because I could see it, I wanted to make the gap between the present and the future, I wanted to shorten it up.
Yeah.
See?
Right.
I wanted to fast forward like that. But you can't fast forward that way, because if you can do it, but you leave everybody behind.
Right.
And it's not about you, it's about the Lord and all these people in between here. And I don't think I would be more patient. God's in things for the long haul. And I think if you're a visionary kind of person, you see that what you want to accomplish, that you're running out of time to get these things done. See, even when you're 50 years old, you have this sense of, man, I got to get hustling here. This is a big thing. It's going to take time and all that. I got to make it happen. See, but time in God's eyes is twinkling of the eye. See?
Yeah. Well, there is no time.
You're in it for that long haul, and so you have to start looking at vision transformation to reality in the context of an eternal time frame. And you're building stuff or dealing with people to make an eternal difference, and so you can't push that with a temporal time frame.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yep. Yeah, and you have to honor God's pace. It's very different than our pace.
Very different. And it seems to be a slower pace. From
our perspective, yeah.
It's a slower pace. I like to put my foot on the accelerator and go.
I'm in an accountability group on Tuesday mornings. We meet at 5:30 in the morning, and I was talking to them this morning, and one of the topics of conversation came up with just how fast things are changing in our society, that it's really moving almost too fast for people, even not just older people, but people even who honestly don't know what's going on, and they're getting shouted down and yelled at. And I was bringing up the illustration. You and I are lovers of history, and I was bringing the point about during the American Revolution, when the Continental Congress got a letter from King George basically threatening them, saying, if you don't stand down, you're all going to hang. And it created a credible amount of unity, but one of the things that Ben Franklin told John Adams, he said that we cannot outpace where the colonies are. He said all 13 clocks must strike together for independence. In other words, if we go ahead of where people are, we will wreak absolute havoc.
That's right.
And you've got to honor the pace of that. And that's a great lesson to, especially with us as pastors, really in any part of life, is that we've got to honor the pace of God in not only people's lives, but our own lives and the church as well. But also knowing when to push.
That's right. And somebody's got to push.
No, it's really hard sometimes to know, and
Because our human tendency is to camp out.
Yes.
But the sadness is that it seems like in the society now, people want it their way, and they're not able to look at a bigger picture. If the Patrick Henry would say, give me liberty or death today, somebody would shoot him.
Yeah, they would.
See?
Say, okay, you want it?
Yeah,
here it is.
Right. They don't think beyond their own desires, their own wants, their own comfort level, their own vision, if you want to call it that, of the future. So they're not tolerant, would be the thing. And I think folks were more willing 10 years ago, or 50 years ago, or 250 years ago. They were more willing to listen and to consider.
Right.
See.
And let's have dialogue, and let's talk and understand one another. Right. Yeah.
And you can agree to disagree, and all of those kinds of things that just seem to have gone out the window now.
Yeah. Well, there's a child psychologist years ago taught me this, and that is, when you're dealing with your children, or really anybody, discipline without relationship equals rebellion. In other words, you can bring discipline, but if your child or people don't understand that you love them, that's behind them, it's just going to have all kind of problems. And that's what I'm watching, and people are just being, it's just a lot of difficulties that happen because there's no dialogue happening.
I was a school headmaster for 28 years. That's critical to discipline within a school. Its relationship and respect has to precede discipline.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. All right, well, so you said, one of the things you said, patience, is that it? Is there anything else? That's enough, but.
About telling what I wish I knew 25 years ago?
Yes.
Patience would be one of them. For sure, that would be at the top. I think that would be at the top of my list. And then at the second part of it would be more of an understanding of history in a place. One of the good things that Bishop Salmon told me when I came to the church here, he said, now when you go there the first year, don't say a word.
That's good. That's good counsel. Yeah.
Don't change a thing. That church has been there a long time. See, without you, figure it out. Find out how it works. Go through the whole year, the rhythm of the year, and figure it out, because it's been going, and it's going to go when you're gone. It's been going. Find out who are the movers and shakers. And he said, one of the things you're going to learn is that most of the decision making is not made by the people who are in positions of making decisions. The influence in a community is somewhere else.
Yeah, and you got to figure out where that is.
You got to find out who it is. Who are the matriarchs and patriarchs? Who are really the influential people? Not who are the faces, but who are the influential people behind the scenes. And figure out how it works, and build relationships. And then the second year, you can begin to say, all right, I understand this, but maybe we could do this or that. But approach it in that kind of context first, and give them, in that year, what you're doing is respecting what has been.
Sure, yeah.
See?
and
not
earn the right to be
immediately-
heard.
That's right, and not immediately discounting them. So I guess that'd be the other
Yeah,
thing.
you and I have watched a lot of people over the last couple of decades going to churches the first couple of years, and they go in and try to start changing stuff, and they die on a hill. You know, they said, this is a hill worth dying on, and they die on it.
And you don't have credibility. That's
You know,
it.
they die on it.
Yeah.
You know, speaking of traditions, so this just comes to mind. So a couple weeks ago, I had the funeral for Loretta Wells, and we had it in the Bluffton Cemetery. Now, I'd never been in the Bluffton Cemetery before. It's the first time I'd ever been there. I'd always wanted to go there and see what it was like, and you were telling me this, but I think I've forgotten about it. But you know, there's a black cemetery and there's a white cemetery. I knew about that. What I did not know is when I went there, and the only reason I even knew about it is because a couple of Loretta's children were asking about it. There's a fence that separates the two.
Oh, yeah.
And,
Separate entrance.
Yeah, and it bothered them, and it bothered me. Like, okay, why are we? I mean, I understand there's this, but why is there this fence? So I went and asked one of the matriarchs of this community, because I wanted to hear what this person thought, and I went and asked them, like, why do we have that fence? And she said, what are you asking? I said, I think the fence should be torn down. She goes, why would we ever do something like that? They don't want it torn down, and we don't want it torn down. Now, I disagreed. But I realized this was a hot topic issue, and you realize I didn't understand it, but I'm trying to understand it better. And she said, there were some people. I think she said, what was the word she used? There were a couple of yahoos a few years ago. I think she'd probably lump me in there, who thought that we should take it down, and they just went away. But see, you're smiling because you've been dealing with this for 25 years. So, and listen, there may be a real reason why that both sides. It was just a surprise to me. So, you got to know why is the fence there before you go tear it down.
Oh yeah.
And there may be people who want it up for a reason.
You know, and it's going to be.
And I trust this person. I like this person.
It's going to be 20 years of funerals before that'll even be a discussion.
Yeah, and I wasn't going to stir it up because it just that's not a hill worth dying on.
I've been there, and I buried babies in there, and I buried old people in there. I buried middle-aged people in there. A lot of good people.
Yeah, well, this person I talked to, they have a good heart, so they didn't say it from a place that other people want to go to, like it was a racist thing. She didn't say that way at all. She just said, no, that's the way it is.
Last time I had a full body burial in there was from one of the patriarchs here in Bluffton, old-time member of the church. And they had the funeral at the church, and then the casket was loaded onto a wagon pulled by 2 white mules.
Wow, I haven't seen that ever. So.
And the funeral procession got behind the wagon, and it went down Highway 46 right there to the cemetery. Yeah.
That's right.
That would have been something that would have been there. That would have been a common sight generations ago. And this guy was in his 90s, and it was a family burial. Most of the places in there are family burial plots.
Yeah.
Where the whole
You
generations
can see all the names on the families there.
Yeah. So he was going into that family burial plot.
I was sharing with Anna, their daughter, because right across the cemetery is Morris Garage, and I got to be
on the other side.
Yes, I got to be quite good friends with Jeffrey Rabinowitz before he died a couple of years ago. But Jeffrey was telling me a story that you can never get someone's car to them fast enough. I mean, if you tell them it's going to be right in an hour, they want it in 30 minutes. And he said, and one time we had someone, we just couldn't get to the car fast enough, and this man came in and was just raising Cain, was yelling at everybody. And he said, suddenly it dawned on me, the 2 people that were working on his car. He said, the 2 guys, one was named Moses, African-American guy who'd been there like 25 years, and the other guy's name was Jesus. Oh. So he said to the guy, come on, I want you to come outside with me. He took him outside, he goes, all right, these 2 guys working on your car. This is Moses and this is Jesus. They're working on your car. You got anything to say to them?
I like that.
And Jeffrey said, the guy said, no, y'all just, whenever it's ready, I'll fine.
Didn't he have a snake in that garage?
Yes, yeah, tiny. It's like a 25-foot long,
boa constrictor
boa
thing, wasn't it?
constrictor.
Something
Oh
like
yeah,
that?
yeah. It's odd. So yeah, anyway,
So
that's
it's a
a true
wonder he
story.
didn't take him to go and meet Tiny. Whoa.
I have down here. So we've talked about things that you are fulfilling and enjoys. What have been some disappointments over the years of ministry that you can talk about? That you feel comfortable talking about?
I think most of them would be hooked to the same things. If patience is an area you wish you were better at, resistance to change would be the disappointment would be that you cast a vision so clearly and a lot of people get in behind it to make something, just like the school over here. A lot of people get in behind it and they can see it and they support it and all that. And then you have these others that you just can't take the scales off their eyes. They just can't see it. Well, that's one thing, they just can't see it. But the disappointment is then they politic against it.
Yeah.
That's a disappointment.
And and a lot of times they do it in silence.
Oh.
Yeah.
Or behind the scenes, that kind of agitating kind of thing, that's a disappointment. And the disappointment is in myself that I couldn't reach them with enough clarity that I could convey the passion for it, that they could grasp it. And in time, I learned it really wasn't about the vision. It's just that they had a vision for what was, and they wanted to recreate that.
Right, and they were afraid of losing.
New.
Yeah, right. They were afraid of losing it.
That's right. And if you're wanting to preserve the past, any step into the future is undercutting where you want to be. And so it was different. That's the problem. So it wasn't a personal affront like I initially thought it was, and it wasn't really about the vision. It was about their sense of what the future ought to look like.
Life changes too. As you get older, you realize this, and I think I've changed in how I counsel people because I realize that's in my own life. But I was talking to someone. It's interesting. All these long-time people who've lived on the May River, a lot of them are dying or have died the last 5, 6, 7 years, and their properties are being put up for sale, and there is literally blood on Calhoun Street, basically, or May River Road, because they're 4 or 5 children. 2 of them want to sell it, 2 of them don't, and you see this all over the place. And it's interesting. I was talking to one of the people, and I realized in the conversation that all of her greatest memories were on the May River growing up. It was when she was the happiest, is when her parents were happiest, when she was with her siblings, and when that land was being sold, I realized she didn't want it to be sold, and I realized she wanted to get it back so she could raise her kids there and they could have all that same thing. And I had to tell her, I said, that's not happening. I said, and I mean that someone in love, they're moving to California, they're going to live in Texas, you're not getting that back. You're trying to get an Eden here on earth. That's gone. But I realize life is transient. I mean, we're just passing through. All of life's like that. I mean, you watch friends move away. You watch us lose things. You got to hold things loosely.
That's right.
And I've watched that up close for me personally. Like, okay, I can't get caught up in this either because it's intensely personal for them because that's their life. But it's the same thing with me too. I mean, so what we had in Bluffton, where it was when I got here 8 or 9 years ago, I loved. It's changing. I don't like that it's growing so much, but that's just the deal, and I got to get over it with it. And
That's right. We're first putting in a seawall out there at the historic campus. Man, there were people in Bluffton thought that was terrible. You shouldn't be doing that kind of stuff. We put it in out of necessity. I mean, the river was just eroding that bank. It was just coming right on back, But they would rather erode, because that's the way it's always been, than to let's stop and preserve something.
Right.
Just different ways of looking at the same thing, and both of them are well-intentioned. See, and
They are.
that's something I
Right.
missed.
Right.
Both of them are well-intentioned. I'm not the only one that's got a corner on what the preferred future ought to be.
Well, it was times of happiness and a time of yesteryear when they thought life was more simple, and they were worried they were going to lose that. But that was coming regardless of whether you did things or not. I mean, it's just Bluffton, just the nature of Bluffton. And it's like that everywhere. I mean,
everywhere. Bluffton, a little bit more dramatic because of the number of people moving here and the pace. But as I talk to people coming from other parts of the country, it changes. And a lot of cities are growing, and they're growing at the expense of the rural areas. But they're growing for all kinds of reasons. So change is normative. The pace is a little bit. Right now the pace seems to be a lot faster than in previous years. Bluffton's always been changing, but it seems like it's going 90 miles an hour now instead of 50 miles an hour.
Yeah, it's getting faster. And that's the thing about us as Christians, as believers, as pastors, is asking, okay, where can God be glorified in this, and how can we help see this through?
That's right. That's right.
Because sitting around and just complaining about it, that accomplishes nothing.
That's right.
So I feel like, at least for us, we've been trying to stay ahead of the curve on this. Mm-hmm. I don't know about you. I feel like we're trying to do that.
Amen. Yep. And by God's grace, we are, as best we can. As best we can. And I think the Vacation Bible School this past week, the way that's morphed over the years, it was a teensy little thing when, in fact, I don't even think we had it the first year or two. Then we had it in just a double handful of children, and because the idea was it was just for the children of the families in the church. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then to morph it into an outreach thing, into the preschool, into the community and all that. And then I think they ended up with 380-something children. That's a crowd of children. Almost 100 volunteers. That's huge. That's change over 25 years, of that inward look to an outward look. So praise God for that.
Well, it's interesting because you said about, you would tell yourself 25 years ago that, you just be patient. It's true on the other end. I'm telling God's people, you guys need to be patient too. I say that with humility and love. We're doing the best we can, and there's a lot coming at you. So
we're doing a lot.
We are. So but we are asking for patience. We're asking you to have patience. That God's over this and in this. That God still works with people. Praise God, that are flawed. His kingdom is still advancing. So that's the thing about it. Long after we're gone.
You going somewhere?
Well, yeah, pretty soon.
Pretty soon you're going.
You
punching
too.
a clip.
You too. I laugh about this. You go over into. You want to just go into a graveyard or go over into the parish hall and go look at the pictures on the wall and see these ministers that were there 75, 80 years ago. Now you may know who they are, but in 2 or 3 generations, you and I are going to be forgotten. Maybe our grandchildren, but after that, you're just forgotten. So.
And that's as it should be.
I went back to when I buried my father up in Danville, Virginia. I was looking at the gravestones, and my aunt was telling me about some of my great aunts who were the teachers of the year in the whole state of Virginia, and how they led these huge causes and stuff like that. I didn't know any of that. And she was the last one to know it. And I probably will not tell my children about it. And I realized they were it 100 years ago. Mm-hmm. And now it's just a gravestone. And in God's eyes, they see that. But that's helpful to know, okay, get over yourself.
Because, that's right. And it's also helpful to know that a lot of the great stories are dying with this generation and need to be preserved. We're doing something. We're going forward by going backwards this Sunday.
Okay. Explain.
River baptism.
Thanks. I like your tie-in.
That's not like a 21st century activity.
Yeah.
But there would have been a time in Bluffton when that's where all the baptisms were done.
Yeah.
We're right there in that river. Coming up on Sunday, got to have a good group of people there. You'll be down in the water.
I will. Yeah.
Yep, I think Josh will be down in the water with them. I'm going to be up on the bank out there.
Okay.
Leading that, but have a good group of people there. Praise God for that. Tomorrow night.
Yes. You can explain. Listen, I've been on vacation mode, so
okay.
I'm missing.
We have a prayer service tomorrow night.
Okay.
7 o'clock, historic campus.
All right.
Evening prayer, communion. Josh is leading all that, and then the prayer teams will be there to pray with people. So, is there anything you remember from you starting all over rebuilding information now.
Yeah, probably right now.
Probably.
Yeah.
You're preaching this Sunday, aren't you?
Yes, I'm told. Yeah. So.
It's going to be good?
Yeah, I mean, it's a sermon I gave a few weeks ago. I think are you with me this Sunday? All right. Well, you're going to sit through it again, so you can just check out over there.
Yeah, but we don't get to be together. We are not together very often. So
no,
I'm
it's
looking forward
great.
to that.
So, yeah, thanks for covering me on Sunday.
Yep.
Yeah, that was great.
We had Tom helped with that. I had switched Josh over that way.
Yeah.
And Josh was over there with Nathan, and I did it here. We did a stand-up communion. People were very gracious about that. Had big crowds. Big crowd. We had.
Yeah,
big,
I watched
big
it
crowd
online.
here.
I watched it online. It did look big, so it was
And
exciting.
over yonder was monstrous because you had all the little children, not all of them, but you had a bunch of little
right,
children on
for
the stage singing.
For
and all
VBS,
that.
yeah. That was a very, very exciting. And, praise God for Michael Ann and what they're doing. And she said the interns they had this summer, it wasn't, who was it? Olivia Hicks and Madeline Cannon have been her two assistants, and she said they've just been incredible. They've been she said they bring a lot of energy, and they were helping out with the kids, and, that many children.
That's a huge undertaking.
It is, a lot of volunteers, and, people sometimes are nervous to get involved with that because they're going to have to, I just say it's about showing up, just show up.
With a smile.
Yeah.
And be patient as best you can, but it's just, I think it's about showing up. It's about showing up. And when you show up, you show that you care. So that's great.
All right, well, anything else we have to add?
I think that's it. River Baptism Sunday. Not too late to sign up for that, but you need to sign up today if you haven't already and want to do that. River Baptism and Recommitment Sunday afternoon. Prayer service, don't need to sign up for that. And then also be watching out for the teachings that Nathan will be doing, the Journey in Discipleship. Wednesday nights starting July the 5th, and that runs right on through for 5 Wednesday nights in a row, supper, and then teaching and programs for all different ages. So that's coming up. Watch for that. Sign up on that. Need to sign up if you're going to be there for the meal. $5 for one person, $10 for two, and the rest of the family eats for free.
Great.
That's a deal. With your crowd right there, you can't get you can't go out to eat for $10.
Well, sure. All my children are working. Well, not all of them. The oldest ones are working, so we'll see if they can make it. But yeah.
But you still got 3 at home, don't you?
Yeah, we saw the little ones. Yeah.
Anyway, lots happening. Thank you all for being with us today. Thank you, Jonathan, for being here and for all that you do.
Thanks for sharing just your thoughts today. It was great.
So next time we come, I'll have a list of questions for you.
Fire away.
And we'll see.
Okay.
We'll see. But thank you for the questions and the opportunity to answer them. Blessings to y'all and all that we do here. Know that God loves you, and I love you as well.